This week, we meet Mark Murphy as he shares his unexpected journey to becoming the co-founder and CEO of Burgerism, a food delivery brand that has gained a very loyal fan-like following. He discusses the challenges of entrepreneurship, the importance of team culture, and the evolution of the brand from a delivery-only offering into a physical presence. Mark emphasizes the significance of building a community of fans and the lessons learned throughout his journey, including the need for resilience and self-confidence in the face of uncertainty of building your own business. I hope you enjoy. Good afternoon, Mark. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Steve. Thanks very much for having me. Good to be here.
So, as we were saying, we're going to talk all about your wonderful food brand, and it's lunchtime, and I haven't had my lunch, and I don't think it's going to be a very good idea, especially with the subject matter that we're going to talk about. So look, we have a bit of a tradition where it's always nice to start the podcast, people getting to get a bit of insight on you and your past, because they see you as this co-founder and chief exec of Burgerism and not realize the journey you've taken to it and also how you got there. And I think it's lovely if people just realize there's a journey and a process to everything that we end up at.
Yeah,
So if you wouldn't mind
definitely.
kicking off with that, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so looking more kind of at my personal background prior to Burgerism, I'd say it's definitely been a journey. It's not a journey I expected to have panned out the way it has either. So I think life does often take turns you don't expect. And the best thing sometimes to go with the flow. From my accent, the audience might guess I'm Irish, but I lived in the UK for about 10 years, worked and lived in London, and then set up the business in Manchester. My background is probably a little bit different. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was growing up. From a medical family, so no kind of business or entrepreneurship in the family, but I was pretty sure I didn't want to be a doctor.
I was going to say, was the pressure for you to follow them into that world?
Yeah, zero pressure. I'm quite squeamish as well, which is funny.
I could never watch Casualty, never.
Yeah, even needles sometimes I'm not great. So no interest in it really. And I studied architecture because I was quite I thought it was a good blend of creativity and maths, and I loved art and I loved numbers. So it's kind of like the guidance counselor 101 would be like, right, if you like those two things, do architecture. But probably not the right space for me. Although it's funny, we've got a new store opening coming at the moment, and I kind of find myself back to my academic roots as an architect almost, which is fun.
And design,
yeah. And I think when it's your own project, it's really cool. But a few more twists and turns before I got to Burgerism. I moved to London. I did a master's in finance. Moved to London. Worked in investment banking, doing equity research, and I loved that actually. Like it wasn't something that I wanted to do for life, but I loved the exposure it gave me to the inner workings of businesses, and like it's quite an indulgent role or job because you get to just go super deep on different industries and different companies. So I was starting to realize what I was interested in at this point. I was probably mid to late 20s, started to realize entrepreneurship is what I really liked. And in the equity research role, I was covering big listed companies in the European stock exchanges. And but I would spend time looking at maybe the niche parts of it, or going off and looking at sectors that weren't specific to mine because I was just interested in them, and spent a huge amount of time listening to podcasts and trying to digest as much information as possible to maybe help me become an entrepreneur, or help me once I had become one. But like, I think what I would say, to the audience as well, is like by far the hardest part is taking that leap, especially when you're in employment. Like I regularly speak to people now who are in that part of their journey. They've got an idea, they've got a desire, but the fear that people have, much like I had, is so real and is usually the biggest stumbling block. I think it's very difficult to give up a salary, and the amount of people that you speak to when it's just an idea, who either change it or reject it, you're like, okay, maybe I'm mad. And so like I'm kind of getting a little bit away from sort of.
No, I think it's a really interesting point. I mean, you're right. But if you've got a dream, and you've got to scratch that itch, haven't you, to a degree, and otherwise you're always going to be sat there going, oh, if only, if only.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think like there are definitely easier paths, like in some respects it'd be quite nice if your calling was to be an accountant or to be a dentist because it's such an obvious path, right? Um, but I think if you want to set up a business, it's full of uncertainty. And the one thing I deal with, so I think it's about eight plus years since I sort of set out. The one constant is uncertainty. So there's certain things you start to get to grips with, but uncertainty never goes away, and you can't get to grips with it in some respects. You can only manage it or get used to it. So it becomes a skill in and of itself. And people speak to me, maybe the people with the kind of in the idea phase, and they might assume that it's all figured out for us at Burgerism and that like the stress is off and it's you've made it kind of thing. But I think most entrepreneurs probably wake up every day saying like I still haven't made it, still not where we want to be. There's still this risk or there's still this opportunity or so yeah.
Well,
It's
that's an interesting question. Then, because you're right, the, there's no finite end to what you do. As in, if you've got ambition,
mm,
you can just. Have you found that you set yourself mental targets when you launch the business, is to say, right, I'll get there, but then you go, oh, now I'm going. It's like that. It's like a false peak, and I've just seen another bit I can climb to sort of conquer.
yeah, 100%. I think you change, we all change over time. And as the business changes, you start to realize there's things that you like and you don't like, either about being a founder or about the business, perhaps. So therefore, you might take it in you might veer it on a different course based
Yeah.
off that. I probably when I set out, I was surrounded by I was in London, I was in banking, I was surrounded by very, very capitalist minded people, and an awful lot of people were even in the entrepreneurial space I would have seen were building businesses to get them sold and to probably sell them on a very quick timeline of 3 to 5 years. And loads of companies have done that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm jealous of those people in many respects. But actually, I started to realize that it probably wasn't me. It's probably not my personality. I kind of over time have started to realize I'm building a generational business. Now that doesn't mean I've got a daughter now. I'm not expecting her to take it over. That's not what I mean. But it's
Otherwise, yeah, otherwise you should be a doctor. Yeah.
yeah. But we are building a business which, when we make a decision, we think, does this decision hold up over the next 10 years, 20 years? It's not, I'm not that obsessed. Well, I'm definitely not interested in growth at all costs, and I'm not that obsessed with growth for growth's sake. So I think a lot of, the UK and the US, the entrepreneurial market can be a bit overwhelming because it is all about growth. We talk about the fastest growing companies, etc. But within that, there's so much detail to the growth beyond, okay, profitability, but do people enjoy working there? And that's one of the things that is extremely important to me is, do people enjoy working at Burgerism? Because if you have that generational mindset that this is a long-term sustainable business, one of the most important things is going to be the people that work within the company and how long they stay there, but also the drive that they have to push it forward. So last year we are in 2026. Last year we won the Sunday Times. We were listed as one of the best employers in the UK. It was the first year we'd applied, and we were listed as the number one employer in the medium-sized hospitality space, which to me, number one was phenomenal. And for me, that was probably the best accolade we've won in 8 years of trading, because it's the one that it really resonated with me. So yeah, to come back to your question, like I think prerogatives change as you evolve, and it's now more interesting to me to um, build a brand that has a cult following. Like it's crazy to see how obsessive people are about burgerism, and also to build a team that we talk about customer experience, we talk about team experience, and to have a team that is. I go into the office now and I see people doing things without being told, and they're doing it better than maybe I would have
Yeah.
actually briefed it, if I've thought about it. But
So
that's
have
inspiring to me.
you've empowered them though. You've created obviously a
Yeah,
culture
well,
that
that's
empowers
what
them.
I've tried. That's what I've tried to do. I've done something. Either I've just looked upon hiring good people, or I've tried to empower them. And yeah, like that's been when I talk about uncertainty and the other constant is change. My role is just constantly changing, which is interesting, as well as challenging. But nowadays, I pretty much look to, if I'm doing a task for a sustained period of time, then I try to hand it off, because usually I should have defined it, and I empower other people. Then I try
Yeah.
to take it over, and I do that because I think it helps them to progress, and it helps me to. There's always another thing then for me to tackle, and it keeps the move. It keeps the whole sort of train moving forward. So yeah, I think sometimes people ask me even now, like, what's your 2 year or 5 year plan? I don't think too far ahead, and I don't get too caught up in it either. Um, the sort of very sort of stupid answer is that we're consistently trying to make a better version of burgerism. Like if we get 1% better every week, that's a hell of a lot
Yeah.
over a year, if you compound it. So that that detail is kind of what makes, I think, a great hospitality business last. And I think that approach is also very sustainable from the point of view of it creates a really good culture, it creates an environment that people can thrive in, I believe.
That there's loads there as usual. This is great. One question just evolves.
I'm a
The
rambler.
first, you're not a rambler at all. I think it's just what I'd like to just go slightly back is so obviously the title of this podcast is Swim Against the Tide, and it's all about
Hmm.
how brands succeed in competitive markets. The sort of takeaway home delivery market could not be well. Maybe it's got more competitive with the turbo of COVID, but it is a classic market for us to cover a brand. When you literally were sitting there and maybe planning in 2017 at your analytics desk in London, thinking this isn't for me, I want to be out there. What was your thought about what burgerism? And you better say what. But I mean, I'm hoping people can guess what burgerism is. But
Yeah.
what was your thought about? Right, I'm going to set up this food delivery brand that is called Burgerism. And what was your sort of dream back then in 2018?
Yeah, I kind of skipped that part of the story,
Yeah,
pretty
just
important
it's
part.
quite important, really, because
No,
it's quite a good story.
yeah, yeah. So I came at this from a very different approach. I didn't come at it from the point of view of burgers for delivery, really. I came at it from the point of view of the delivery market booming. It was 20, like people probably forget, like Deliveroo only got going, I think, in 2013. And prior to that, you couldn't get restaurant quality food delivered. You could only get your local sort of takeaway for delivery. And delivery changed the game in that respect. So I could see, this is 2017 now, we're quite far along, but we still were in high double-digit growth in delivery. And I could see that more and more restaurants were putting tablets in their kitchens, but there was zero change to their operation. They weren't addressing delivery. It was just a tablet, and they were fulfilling some orders.
So were they sort of dealing with it as like it was another somebody sat at a table, another
Yeah,
couple of
yeah.
covers that they had to deal with and fit into a system that was made for actually hospitality,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
and it sort of blew me away because, like, if we could see what had already happened in e-commerce. If you think about, so Amazon started out selling books online, but it would have been really weird if Amazon built a bookshop to do that. They obviously built a warehouse, and that made them way more efficient. It delivered a whole service at a cheaper cost, and they could offer a much bigger range. So that was what drove me. I thought there's got to be a way that we'll do something similar in food delivery. Now, in some respects, the first sort of virtual or online kitchen was already in place. Like Domino's has kind of been doing this for a long time, but somewhat under the radar in terms of people never really thought of it like that. And so so we thought that we could build a suite of delivery brands, if you like, and we set out to build we built our own dark kitchen in Manchester. We built at least four brands. I think we crafted at least 20 logos anyway. This
I
is
think you can share those, and I can put them on the thing. I forgot
yeah,
that one.
some of them I don't know if I want to share. But but Burgerism was the first one, and I didn't come up with the name. That was John. I think it's a bloody great name because, as you said there earlier, the clue is in the name. You know, and
Yeah.
that was one of the things because we were looking at it from an online point of view, a marketplace point of view. If you're going to scroll a marketplace with dozens of options, there's only dozens of options back in 2018. Now there can be 1,000 probably plus in London. But we thought you got to have a name that's obvious. So Burgerism was the first brand. It was a smashed burger brand. It was a super lean menu. Again, because if you're in that e-commerce world, you don't want to be scrolling a menu with 90 items. You want to be told really that we're a specialist in burgers. Therefore, either get the cheeseburger or you can
Yeah.
add bacon kind of thing. And very focused on fresh ingredients, cooking everything to order, and excellent packaging. Packaging that was both functional and like aesthetically looked very good from a kind of branding point of view. So that launched first. I remember the first night, I think we did 5 or 6 orders, and it's quite weird because you just turn on, we were only on Uber at the time, you just turn on a tablet and a couple of people order, and you're like, hey, how did they
Yeah.
decide
I've
to
done
order
it.
burger
I've
for tonight?
arrived. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, I've made it.
Yeah.
But but yeah, the other brands were good and I think had legs, and in some respects, I wish we could have pursued them, but Burgerism started getting too busy, and I wasn't from hospitality. I did work in Domino's as a delivery driver in my student days, but like we didn't really know what we were doing in the kitchen. So we decided to, after it took us about probably a year and a half or 2 years to just go all in on Burgerism and to kind of can the other brands. And we took elements of some of those other cuisines into Burgerism's menu. The chicken burger, for example, used to be a separate brand. Um, and then we kind of became for a while like the Domino's for burgers. And we had this huge growth trajectory during COVID. We were growing really strong prior to COVID, but it just really took off. I think in May 2020 in Manchester, I think pretty much every restaurant was offline except for us, and we were sort of able to make it work because we were in a warehouse and um, we were always set up for online. So yeah, it's almost like you asked earlier, like you change according to what is happening in the business, and it was very obvious to us that we just had this we had this kind of number one hit in burgerism, and it deserved all of our attention and still does. So that's kind of how it came about. So the delivery stuff is still absolutely core to who we are. Like to put it in context, we're a top five partner of the delivery marketplaces in Manchester, which when I look at the competitors, it's quite incredible because they're all, it's Nando's, it's McDonald's, it's
So that's against all of the major
KFC.
brands that people will know. Yeah.
Yeah, and like we're delivering out of 3 locations. We've got a fourth location, which is a food hall, but to be doing that from 3 locations, and some of them have like 30 locations. So in Greater Manchester, yeah, I think it tells us we're doing a hell of a lot right, and it has to be something to do with that kind of blend of sort of obsessed with um delivery as well as a really good product to back it up. I think if we were obsessed with delivery and shipping out crap burgers, it wouldn't have gone past a year. So it had to be the blend. And but what I was saying is that the evolution now is about building out even more of a brand and moving more into the physical domain. I think I'm not an outright believer in bricks and mortar. It's not necessarily where I see burgerism going, like prime real estate, but in Manchester, there's definitely demand for a city centre location. There's so many people that pass through the city that, if you're up for a football trip and you're, I don't know, a Chelsea fan or something like that, you're not really going to order in. You're probably going to get something when you're out. And I think lots of people want to try burgers, and we've heard about it from other parts of the country. And so it would be really cool to offer that to them. We're opening a store. I'm probably getting ahead of myself.
No,
Um,
no, there's
we're
no
opening a,
order to this.
yeah, no, just more in
I'll
terms of
drag you
my
back. I'll drag you back. I'll keep a theme through it. Yeah.
good to have you here then. Yeah, so that's why the next store we're opening, we're in the middle of it right now, is a transition away from being a pure sort of dark kitchen brand. And it's a very exciting move. And I said at the start about kind of finally doing my first project as an architect about 15 years after well, I never qualified, but 15 years after I got my degree at least.
You learn enough to put it
Yeah.
together. Yeah.
So that location is going to allow people to come in and order in person, to order on kiosks either, or to order on the website and come down and collect, as well as all of the delivery options. Um, which is an interesting evolution, and it could really force our hand in terms of what we do next, and it could be more of that, as well as some of the delivery models that we built out.
And will there be a dine-in option there as well?
Yeah, so we're keeping it quite minimal, but there'll be space for up to about 20 people to sit in and
All
eat.
right,
It'll
nice.
be kind of like your Shake Shack type model, where people order at the counter and take the food back to their table. Um, yeah, so
Hot sort of
lots of
wait service.
learnings. Mm.
And why Manchester? Why did you decide to own Manchester as you have done?
Yeah, a good question. We worked very closely with some of the delivery marketplaces, Uber Eats in particular. We were working with their special projects team about where to launch
Is
this
this where your
kind of.
analytical background came back in?
Yeah, I think as much as anything, it kind of got us in the door because I was able to sell a good story through data. But
Build that argument that went, oh God,
yeah,
this
we
guy knows what he's on
we
about.
got we got chatting to some really senior people in these businesses, which was funny because it was we didn't I don't know if we'd even registered as a business, but the idea gripped them because there was an issue as they were rolling out across more of the UK. They couldn't always get restaurants online very quickly, and they'd have a lot of cuisine gaps. So I was interested in going where their data showed latent demand. So either there was a lot of demand already, but they just couldn't meet it through the restaurants they had, or else where there was demand for a cuisine that didn't exist or they didn't have enough of. So the data really is what drove us to Manchester, as well as the cuisine choice. That's what led us to do
So that's
burgers. And
why you
then
decided to go with the Burgerism brand rather than the other two or three
yeah,
that you come up with.
yeah, and
Okay,
we thought
fascinating.
like, funnily, we thought burgers was tough because they're not the easiest thing to deliver. Same for fries. I think when people think of getting fries delivered, they often arrive cold, maybe soggy. I can't say we've cracked it, but I think we've done a really good job of it. We get a lot of feedback that our fries deliver very well, and I think it's part of like it's a very competitive market, both delivery and burgers. But actually, sometimes I really I advise people to seek out competitive markets, because if you're going into a market where there's very little competition, it's also a sign that there's very few companies profiting there. Um, Whereas if you go into something that's already, requires no education, people know what burgers are, people want delivery, right? Tick, tick. Then can you just, and only just, but can you be not maybe the best, but can you be extremely good within that, at least the top 10%? And I kind of think that's easier to do than to build out a whole new segment. Like a good example of that is, I think 5, 6 years ago, everyone was talking about veganism within food service. And the trend hasn't necessarily gone away, but the pursuit of the trend has died down. Like a lot of the brands that came along, there was a lot of vegan burger brands set up, they've disappeared because ultimately there just isn't a big enough market size to sustain that operation. And so we're quite lucky that actually the data said to do the most obvious thing, which was, well, burgers are the most delivered thing. So you should probably do that. And that's the way it's played out for us. And I think the innovation as well as delivery was also doing smash burgers, because smash burgers at the time didn't really exist in the UK. And this is 2018 when we started, and there was very few burger choices in Manchester, but no smash burger brand. So it's always good to be first, but it's also important to make sure that, when the competition comes along, that you're well equipped to compete. And we've done that time and time again. So it certainly gives us a lot of faith that people like what we do.
And what does the delivery of the burger as a smash burger give you? Because you talk a lot about being able to deliver kind of restaurant standard food in a takeaway, delivered format. So what
Mm.
does the smash format work better? Does it travel better or?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think if we I'm pretty sure we tested a non-smashed burger for delivery. We kind of tested everything in the early days. But the smashed burger um probably delivers better. Um, but I think it's more, I think it's more about how you wrap the burger and how you package the burger. Like, it's an easy example would be some burgers are wrapped in foil, which is fine if it's going straight to a table, but if it's going in the back of a bike for 30 minutes, that burger, the bun is going to be so soggy by the time it arrives. It's just going to sweat for 30 minutes, basically. So we've been really careful about all of the decisions around the paper that we wrap the burger in, the box that we use, and so, and even as well, we cook everything to order because, again, I think it's anything we can do to shorten the time from the person ordering to the time the food turns up at the house is the better. So smash burgers in that respect are very good because they're a short cook time. Um, so yeah, there's kind of a few things involved, and I think as well as the actual sort of the functionality of the packaging and making sure the food arrives as you intend. It's also there's room to have a delivery experience at home in terms of it's not just the food. Like there's other things that we include in our orders. So we've worked with different designers and we work with an illustrator, for example, on our coasters. So we include a drinks coaster with every order that has a drink. Even that I think is like, okay, delivery doesn't have to just be kind of blank food in
It
a
can
white
still
bag.
be an event,
Yeah, it
can't
can
it?
be a
You
bit
can
of an
still,
experience.
yeah.
But you collect all those coasters and it creates a map of Manchester, which has it's been something we've been doing for about 3 or 4 years. And there's still, even now, we get DMs from people, I've just finished the map after 2 years. And you're like,
I've got
okay.
9 of the third. Yeah, they've got loads
Yeah,
of
yeah,
one. Yeah.
that was happening for a while.
It's a bit like my son collecting the football cards. He keeps getting the same ones now, it feels like.
Yeah, yeah. So, it helps you build a relationship because we were aware that in that online domain, we're not meeting and greeting customers. So, but what are the little touches that we can do, the things that people perhaps don't expect? And so there's other things that we do, and I think it's like something we're always looking at. Can we do more there
Because
to
sorry, Mark, you refer to your customers as fans, don't you, as a rule? That you've built this.
yeah, I mean,
Tell me a little bit about that.
well, it sort of came about because they feel more like fans than customers. I think it's like they're so supportive of the brand, and we don't get everything right. Like we're serving over 10,000 customers a week. We smashed 1 million patties last year, so you can't expect to get every single one perfect. But
Decent numbers, though. Well done. That's
yeah,
amazing.
it's insane, really, when you think about, yeah, 1 million patties. But where it does go wrong, we might get a message from someone who's, I've ordered from you so many times, absolutely love what you do. Um, every time it's been perfect, but just want to say last night this thing was wrong or this thing was missing. I didn't want to leave you a bad review. And you're like, that is such a nice message to get. Obviously I'm annoyed that it went wrong,
Yeah,
but
but you
like
you're
you're
given a
so
chance
on
to
our
fix it,
side.
aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's been the ethos of the brand. And right from day one, when it started kind of getting going, people could see that we were, scrappy and we didn't really we had no marketing budget. But so people would be very helpful around either spreading word or just putting it on their own socials, or so it became a real word of mouth thing, Burgerism. And it's been driven, a lot of our tags are driven by fans, and there's kind of a slogan popped up around the brand, if you know, you know, because we were this stealth burger brand. We didn't have a sign above the door. It was in an industrial estate on the edge of town. It was dark. It didn't
It
make
shouldn't have
sense.
worked. Yeah,
No,
it shouldn't be
yeah,
something
and
people are tweeting about or posting about.
exactly, yeah. And maybe that's part of the magic too.
Well, yeah, because if they find it and own it, that's the key, isn't it? That's what people
Yeah,
want.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You've also looking from the outside, and especially like looking at Instagram and TikTok. Even at my age, I am on there, obviously for research purposes. But you've done a really good job of kind of creating an event around eating this food either at home or in the car, haven't you? And
Yeah,
I just think that's really, really smart.
yeah, yeah. I mean, again, like it's come from the fans. Some of the best pictures of Burgerism's food have been from people eating in their cars, and it
Car
just it
picnic, it's called, isn't
yeah, the
it?
car picnic idea and the packaging, I think, is a part of that too. It's like it's kind of an unboxing experience, and it's a bit of a trend in the UK. But like I look a lot at In-N-Out Burger in LA, and I've read their books and stuff. It's similar to how they started. They didn't have a dining room. It was about they were the first drive-through in America, probably the first in the world, I suppose. And it was very kind of stitched together with kind of um, you know, love and glue, but it worked because it was novel and because it was so personal. And their whole brand actually became like really synonymous with cars, and they started to then um, almost host like car meetups and things like that as well. So, and Burgerism's got a similar sort of dynamic, and that's why I think sometimes you don't know what you are as a brand until your customers tell you what you are. Like there's certain values that you'll always have. Um, but yeah, so like we don't, we had some photographers in and they're like, could we shoot this food in a restaurant? And that to me, that would just be like disingenuous because it's just not a restaurant. So
It's got to be
we
a
either,
sofa, hasn't it?
yeah, we either shoot in someone's house or in a car. And that's the sort of maybe grim reality of it, or maybe from another perspective, it's kind of the beauty of it as well. So I think it's authenticity really matters to me and to us as a business. So yeah, it and but like interesting going into this Piccadilly Garden store in central Manchester because all of a sudden we do have a table to photograph burgers on, and when we can have more people experience the brand more fully. So that's it. Maybe it gives us a different dimension, which is cool as well.
Yeah, because like say, not everybody orders from
Yeah.
Deliveroo or
Mm.
Uber, do they? I think it's like that whole idea of if you've got such an incredible product, yeah, it's grown that way, but it's allowed to evolve into different markets, isn't it? As
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
consumer or your fans decide. Got a quick
Yeah.
question for you then. Whose idea was the air freshener?
I don't know.
Oh, gee, I saw that and thought that's brilliant
Yeah,
because
so like that's
if
one
you're
of
eating
the other
a lovely big dirty burger or some
I kind
wings
of
in your car,
yeah. Like a few people have asked us, is the air freshener, does it smell
burger
of
smell.
beef? Yeah, you're like, no, like I mean that would defeat the point. But it's I can't remember who came up with it. I would have been closely involved because I'm always asking the team. I love these like one-off kind of random pieces of merch that you can do. And I think it feels really hard to do a lot of this stuff, but if you put a bit of energy in, you can get really cool stuff. And I think it makes the experience just that bit better. Because probably what I didn't make clear, like we started out as delivery only, but we've evolved to delivery and collection, which is maybe doesn't sound like a big deal, but the collection thing was interesting because a lot of people used to call and say, could they order? And we were like, well, you have to order on Uber or delivery or whatever. And they're like, well, I live in, wherever, which is an hour drive away, but I want to try burgerism. So initially it was like, well, I'll just take your order over the phone because I can't give you a computer says no type answer here. And then it grew to like, okay, we need a full collection website, we need a collection operation. And that's where, the car air fresheners come in. There is a bit more direct contact with customers perhaps than is obvious. But yeah, it's those pieces of merch are cool, and I think like there's a few more in the pipeline. Yeah,
Watch this space. And I suppose, has it allowed you to build a better, well, not a better, but maybe get a bit more detail on your customers? Whereas, because I know there's
Yeah,
always this big
yeah,
debate, isn't it, when you go through all of the
mm.
delivery companies that it's their customer and you happen to be just a supplier sort of thing.
Yeah,
So is
yeah,
that giving you
definitely.
that insight?
We have a lot more contact with our customers than we don't just rely on delivery and Uber. Like so, whether it's that they've ordered direct and you can kind of see information through that, but also through socials, like you can really build a picture of who of what our customer base looks like. So we feel really confident about that without having access to every single, order that comes in. But it is a theme. I think delivery in general it can be seen as the kind of like you know, it, it's not as pro restaurant as it could be. I'd be the first to say that. I think the restaurants are the delivery market, right? And it's just these people, the platforms are the facilitators. And I think over time that relationship's not as symbiotic as it used to be. And yeah, I've talked a bit about that in the past. But I think ultimately, if you become a really strong brand, and like we're not a national brand, but in Manchester we are effectively because we're as strong as the nationals in Manchester, then they have to listen to you, and you get a lot more um presence at the table, I guess, and that helps us, but it helps the customer experience, which is probably the important part.
Yeah, it's funny when I was researching as well. Like you say, when you look through the socials, it's a very creative look and feel, and like you say, a lot of you generated content in a great way, where they're
Good to hear.
sharing their event of eating this burger, which is
Yeah.
wonderful, which is what so many brands dream of. But I can see the sort of Mark Murphy in a lot of your posts in terms of you love your facts and figures, don't you? You had a
Yeah.
brilliant thing for 2025 showing that
Yeah.
which was the best-selling burger, which
The
cheeseburger, the
infographics.
cheese,
Yeah,
50,
the cheese.
50% of sales on cheese.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
look, the menu is quite lean, and I think it's also about like because there is less to choose from, we have to be expert in everything that we make. So it gives us an opportunity. Like for us, when we train people, we're only training them on a few menu items, and it gives
Yeah.
them a much better probability of success at burgerism. So it's kind of it's part of the beauty of what we do is that it works at volume as well. You know, we can still maintain the consistency and the quality. Um, but yeah, that's funny you picked up on that, the data and the infographics. I
I
think
think it's
social,
great because people love
yeah,
it. They're like that. And
it
the
tells
bit
a
where you
story.
where you've got the stuff about what's removed. These poor
What's
gherkins.
yeah,
These poor
no, that's almost like
369,000 gherkins removed from your burgers. Well, I never.
and we've got a team that pretty much loves pickles, so it's like justice for pickles is the tagline there. But yeah, it's fun to see it, and it's quite incredible to see the numbers sometimes as well. But I also quite like, you know, we're quite open about the numbers. Like we quite like telling our fans, telling our audience, like what this is what we do, and it's almost like they're part of the story then, because I think that the world has kind of adopted a kind of much more transparent business has adopted a much more transparent way of doing things, and it's not just in your sort of policies and it's also in, you know, your facts and figures around the brand too. I think it helps people connect with us better.
I think obviously you're very public about the culture you've created and the importance that you put on your teams. And people from the outside would like that. They don't want to think you're running some sweatshop in a warehouse in Manchester where you're flogging these poor guys that, you know, so they start to question what goes on with my burger, whereas they think, no, this person loves what they're doing. They get great.
Yeah,
There's love going into my food. And I think
yeah,
it's, people want that, especially that generation that you'll be, I don't know what data you've got in terms of
mm,
how
he's our
you
customer.
optimize, whether it's a younger market or an older market. I think it's a more important factor than maybe to a lot of sectors.
Yeah, I think it is. I think long gone are the days where someone would proudly buy from an organization that, you know, treats its people really badly. I just think it all has to flow, and our motivation is more pure than just trying to appease a customer. But we want to have a good team because we ultimately think a happy team means a happy customer. So
But you
there's
also know operationally, Mark, don't you? If you don't have to keep recruiting and training staff, it's a
yeah,
lot
oh,
easier life. You know,
exactly,
it's
exactly.
such an obvious thing to say, but so many people miss it. And for the sake of spending a bit more love and who you recruit and how you then train and develop and the
Yeah,
environment and by which they can work in, means a
yeah.
much more stable business.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's well worth the time and effort. And so we survey our whole team every quarter, the whole business. We do a satisfaction survey. Um, there's about 15 questions or so, and then there's always room for comments. And so we've managed to kind of keep those scores pretty high over the last, well, since we started it really. Um, but there's still negative comments, and we have to listen to them. And I always say, no matter how disgruntled someone might be, there's still a valid point in there, and it's that feedback which does allow you to improve. So there's always room for improvement, but I definitely see a team that is, you know, very motivated, very together, very resilient, and very proud to be at Burgerism, which is everything ultimately. Because without that, I don't think there is a business, and I think that's the thing. That's probably the biggest learning for me as a founder is, you know, when I started out coming from a finance background, people don't talk about the importance of a team and the importance of culture, and that's by far the most important thing at Burgerism now. You know,
No, I think
yeah,
I think it's becoming. It's interesting. We're doing some work with a couple of advisors, and one of the things they're looking at when they're looking at businesses, yeah, whether they're helping them get ready for an exit or an event or things like that, is much more now featuring what is the brand and the culture of the business, and want to be able to
Mm,
measure that and put that within the document.
yeah,
It's not just going to be about we sold this many burgers this year, we're
yeah,
hoping to, because they realize that long-term plans come from a solid base, and being able to articulate and measure that is a really
yeah,
interesting thing.
totally. I think it's kind of ironic. I'm the KPIs that I keep more to the forefront of my thinking would be around people. I'm a little bit less interested in the financials because I sort of have a gut feel on the financials. I think they're quite easy. And I just know once those percentages are X or Y or whatever, we're fine, and we'll be in a better position at the end of the year than we were at the start financially. But around the people stuff, it's like if there's any sort of slide, it's like you gotta look at that straight away. And the other one is around the standards. So, your product, your customer experience standards. And those two things, they're the inputs and the output is the finance. So,
Yeah,
you,
the
you
money
wouldn't
follows
ask,
that successful relationship, doesn't it? But if
yeah,
you flip that and had started this whole thing of how much can I make by selling a burger,
mm,
you'll have cut costs on staff, you'll have cut costs on
mm,
quality, and guess what? The customer would have said, "See ya, I've got a better choice around the corner."
yeah,
And it
completely,
sounds
completely.
so obvious and
Yeah,
maybe a bit immature to say it like that, but it's true, isn't it?
it is. Yeah, yeah. It's the most valuable approach I can see to taking in starting and running a business. Yeah.
People feel that love. So look, obviously we've got to look a bit to the future. That's all right,
Hmm.
Mark. What
Yep.
we've got the store in Piccadilly Gardens opening. What's the date? What's the set date for that? Or give me a week. Give me a couple of weeks. We're gonna.
Yeah, well, I think I can commit to a date, but as soon as I say it, it'll probably something will happen. I think we're going to open on the 11th of February, which is a Wednesday,
Let's
and
just
which is very
say
soon.
February for this
Yeah,
podcast sake. We'll say February.
yeah. So we're planning to soft launch with that on that date, and we've had a really good build team in place. They're in week 3 of a week 5 build, and there'll be another week after that where we're just getting everything set up internally and getting the team ready to go. But no, really exciting build. I think it's a really nice opportunity for us to express the brand, in a physical space.
As you say, the next
And
sort of iteration involvement of the brand, which is interesting. I suppose
yeah,
also from what you've said, I know we joke about the date, but for the sake of a week, you want to get people are going to get experience that for the first time once, aren't they? So it's worth getting
yeah,
right.
yeah, definitely. So always what's much more important in a new opening is it's not how many burgers you sell, but how many happy experiences you have with your customers. So you don't want to burn any customers in those opening weeks. And yeah, so we kind of have that as the number one priority. And if we're not ready, we won't open. But
Yeah, don't
uh,
risk it.
yeah.
And what about have you ever considered the idea of lifting the concept and say going to Birmingham or Leeds, or with your
Mm.
analysis, what other potential cities? Because going into London, although it's a massive market, it's such a different landscape, isn't it, for this world?
It is. I think when I moved from London to Manchester, I felt I'd finally moved to England. Whereas when I was in London, I felt like I was in a global city. Yeah, and I would hear as much French or Spanish being spoken on the streets as I would English. So Manchester truly is an English city, and it's a very different place to London. I think it is a bit of it. I think it's a different country, and I think. Londoners talk about the rest of the UK as the regions, which is probably the worst possible way to describe everywhere else because it does not make people feel
It
um,
doesn't warm you to them, does
special.
it?
No, like
No.
it's Manchester. It's not a
Yeah.
regional city. It's Manchester. If I call London, it's just the capital city, or it's a non-regional city. It'd be a weird way to refer to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think there's a huge challenge there because what I've just talked about there, it describes a very different mindset in these places. And a lot of London brands come to Manchester and struggle, and not too many non-London brands go to London because there's a huge market outside of London. London's about 10 million people, and the UK is about 60. I could have my numbers wrong, but roughly. So there's 50 million population to target without ever going to London, and I'm not in a rush to go there because I think it's so saturated and I think it's really hard to stand out. The other theme I see and I hear about is the culture of building a really strong culture and building a team is even harder in London because there's a lot more transient workers. So, there's pros and cons. And the big benefit, I think, of starting in London is that you don't need to leave until maybe store number 20 or store number 30. So that's quite nice operationally. Um, but all of that is sort of at the same time, I'd say like some of the best hospitality brands in the UK or in the world are in London, and equally, I think there's some phenomenal brands being built in Manchester too. So it's really interesting to see the UK change to be less, from a hospitality point of view, anyway, less focused on London and everything coming out of London. For us, I think what comes next beyond Manchester is probably Leeds, and we are.
Great city. I
I'm
can
actually a
definitely
Leeds
go.
fan as well. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
So
It's
am
not going to be
I.
popular
I
with the
knew we'd get
United
on.
fans.
I knew
Yeah,
we'd get on.
yeah, there
Right.
we
Well,
go.
you can come to Leeds with us then. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted an excuse to go to Elden Road more. But
There you go.
yeah, Leeds is a good city, and yeah, I think it's got similarities to Manchester. I think people really appreciate when you try to do things right and when you do things with care. So for us, I would like to kind of saturate Leeds, much like we are doing with Manchester, because it just doesn't make sense to plant flags all across the country. Like, why would you put a flag in Glasgow and then one in Southampton and then try and manage that operationally when you've got all these areas to fill in between? So Leeds is easy to get to. We've actually got team who already kind of live near Leeds, and yeah, we're trying to get in there hopefully later this year.
All right. Brilliant. Would you ever? Obviously, I've had, as you know, quite a few sort of hospitality and restaurant brands on the podcast so far. Would you
Yeah,
ever consider a franchise model? Would that be
yeah,
something that
and
you'd look at?
that came to mind when you asked about expansion. Like, franchising is a great way to expand, because you can keep an ownership type mentality even in further away places. I think that's what's really important about new openings. We really did look at it at the start of the year and start of 2025, I should say. And in the end, I thought there was other better opportunities to tackle first. I think, and it's actually a good thing to say. If we get people get in touch all the time about franchising. Someone messaged me about Gibraltar recently, which I thought was interesting. So it's not that we wouldn't do it. I just feel I'd need to really connect with whoever is looking to franchise the brand, and I'm looking to find someone almost like me, 7, 8 years ago when I started the brand, because I was incredibly hungry. I worked. Hungry is a funny word to use because I was working in the kitchen,
Yeah, good dad
but
joke. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, um, I worked in the kitchen for 3 years straight. Like, that's probably people nowadays would
This
be
is why I love
when
though, because smart people would think, "Oh, there's Mark, founder
yeah,
and chief executive of this lovely, successful chain,"
it's
and he
like
was grafting for 3 years in the kitchen.
yeah. I did the KP for the KP is the kitchen porter role. I did that routinely for about 2 years, and it made me understand the business and appreciate the team and the roles much more. So I would like someone to do the same, in if they want to build out a version of Burgerism in a different territory or a different country, that's what I'm looking for. And then maybe that's an unreasonable request, but I am very sure if someone's prepared to do that, they'll be able to build a really good business. Whereas I'm not too sure if someone comes in with lots of capital, that they'll succeed. So,
I think they'll just see it. Well, it's interesting. It's back to our point earlier that their driver's cash, not whereas
mm,
if you were
yep,
to fund. I mean, I heard you on another podcast talk about potentially getting a manager from one of your stores now to say, "Right, do you want to open up the one in Leeds? Do you want to open up the one in whatever you are, or even further
yeah.
afield?"
I could see
That
us going that way. Yeah,
that's
almost
interesting.
like
And
a
so it's a
competition.
partial funded model, isn't it, rather than pure franchise?
Yeah, I think if we can build up sufficient cash reserves to back people to do that, that to me would be really fulfilling. And it just creates this very obvious pathway then for people at Burgerism who want to really be ambitious in their career to eventually have their own store, which is truly their own store. And yeah, so it's hospitality is a tricky thing because there's so many great people in hospitality, but it's so like, you know, full on that you don't often get the headspace to step back and think about your own direction and what you want to do, etc. And yeah, to kind of financially support those people to build their own business would be really cool. Yeah.
You need a good podcast to get someone to ask you the questions, then you start thinking about it again,
Yeah,
don't you?
that's it. Yeah.
I'll let you know if I find one As usual, I've completely gone over time. Is my Mark, I've got one last question, which I think we suggested this was like, you've been doing this for 8 years now. Is there something you've learned in that 8 year journey that you'd wish you could tell young Mark kicking off with
Yeah,
his kitchen porter days? That
yeah,
obviously
yeah.
hindsight's a wonderful thing, but what would it be? What would you love to tell your younger self then?
Yeah, it's I hope I've learned something in the last 8 years. I mean, there's been so many things I didn't expect to learn. To kind of narrow it down to one piece of advice is tricky. I think it, on the one hand, has been by a mile the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But on the other hand, it's been the most rewarding. So it's like you've got to be prepared for a very tough few years. I'm not sure if I'd even gloss it up and say, even in those early days, it's still exciting. I'm not sure. But I think if you're resilient and you're prepared to persevere, yeah, it's been an amazing journey for me. It's almost like doing, well, it's far better than doing an MBA. I haven't done an MBA, but I just know it is. It's so real.
You've
It's
learned
so,
more, haven't you, from reality?
yeah,
Yeah.
you got to really back yourself. And I don't know if there was one thing, like in terms of advice, what a lot of people will give you advice, especially when you're a founder. There's something about it in the early days. But I think it's really important to listen to the advice, but not always to follow it and to become a strong filter. You know the business better than anyone else, or you know your vision better than anyone else. So listen to it, but it's good to ignore it too. And I definitely found myself in positions over the years where I was getting advice from people more senior, more experienced than me, but it wasn't always the right advice, and it took me a while to have the confidence to sort of say that to myself as well. Um, so I think you've got to have incredible self-confidence and self-belief rather, and to really ignore the naysayers and just push through really hard stuff or stuff that people say is impossible, to get to that sort of end point, which I'm still not at, but I'm closer now than I was when I
Getting
started.
nearer.
Yeah,
Getting nearer. Right, Mark, so lovely. Thank you for sharing your story. And
yeah,
I will look forward to Leeds opening very soon. Come on.
yeah. No, thanks for having me on, Steve. Thanks for listening. It's been good to chat.
I can open up our office of 80 people. They'll all be ordering. Okay. There you go.
Yeah,
There's a
we'll
start.
give you a little discount.
Good lad. There you go. You're a Yorkshireman at heart. I like it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Steve. See you.